Hi, Sidhartha. Good to see you again.
Hi, how are you?
I'm well. How have you been since the last time we spoke?
Good, thanks.
Good. So, a quick introduction to you. I mean, Sidhartha Mallya, the quintessential playboy once upon a time of the Indian media, full of, part of the headlines, the glitz and glamour, the IPL, kind of disappeared somewhere in the middle and has resurfaced with a book, if I am honest. And like I said this earlier, repeating it again, never judge the book by the cover. Siddhartha has got a lot to share with us today. And we're hoping that, it shows a lot of you the way forward as well, because, opening up to public, opening up as a public persona is not always easy. So, Siddhartha, thank you for joining me today on Table Talk. How's the book doing?
Yeah, it's good, thank you. It's been busy. I mean, the reviews that we've received and the feedback from the public who've bought it have been great. So happy with it.
I'm happy with it. So tell me something, and before I have a lot of questions that were left over from our last
That's
conversation.
for sure.
But before that, when you were writing this book, were you a bit worried about, the kind of reputation that you had, or the fact that, you were considered more like a media personality? Would that hamper, the sale of the book?
No, I didn't write this book to make money or for the sales figures. I wrote it to help people. And as I say at the beginning of the book, as long as it can help one other person going through something, then it's a success. I think, it wasn't necessarily to do with the sales of the book, but it was more to do with, and this isn't just me. We should all be honest with ourselves and say, as human beings, we like to categorize people. And once we've labeled them and once we've categorized them, it's very difficult to change our opinion, right? Once you have an opinion of someone, it actually takes quite a developed human being to actually say, oh, do you know what? I had a different image of you, and now you've changed my mind, kind of thing. Because once we have an image of someone, we want to stick to that. So I
Of
was more
course.
kind of concerned that it would sort of what people thought they knew I was, or what they thought who I was. Um, they wouldn't, then there would be that sort of like, well, we're only going to see him this way. We're not going to be open-minded enough to see him for what he's doing right now.
Yes, it's very hard, isn't it? Especially in the kind of environment today, to change people's perceptions and to change the way they're thinking or the way they judge. Very easy to judge today.
It's very easy to judge. I mean, it's become even not only just to judge, but it's with the world of social media, and like, look, right now we're doing a live, and people have the opportunity to comment by clicking a button. So judgment has become even easier, and not only just to judge, but to get your point of view across.
So I was going to come to this question later, but we're talking about social media and this judgment. So there's been, how do you handle the kind of trolling that comes your way?
I'm reading some of the comments now, and
So my, yeah.
it's like there's so many messages of love and so many positive messages. But I guess with social media, you have to take the good with the bad, and sadly, it's a platform that breeds just as much hate and just as much trolling as it does love and support. Is it easy? No. Does it feel good? Absolutely not. And I think that if people want to write here saying that they hate my book, that's fine. It's subjective. It's a work of art, right? You don't have to like the book. But to write comments about me based on who I might happen to be related to because you have a problem with them, I think people need to probably take a little bit of a step back and think before they type. But that's not going to happen. Let's be honest, that we could sit here for talking about this for hours. People feel entitled to get their point across, and everyone is entitled to an opinion. I would just ask that people,
Yes.
took a little bit of time thinking before they wrote.
I wish they would. Anyway, let's get to your book. Siddhartha, do you want to just show your book cover if you have it nearby? If I'm honest, your book, do you have it lying nearby?
Yeah, I've got it with me right here. It's on the table.
Yes, so it always comes like this, folks. His book, so it's a deep dive into Siddhartha's mental health issues. And Siddhartha, let's start at the beginning, as they say. Tell me, why did you write the book? And, what was it? And I've asked you this before as well. Was it the feeling that, you were uncomfortable for a long while? Or was it, as you mentioned, even in the book, that you sometimes didn't realize you'd been depressed?
No, I mean, for a lot of the time, I didn't realize it, right? I think that's one of the things I learned about I realized that one thing that I learned was that you can be depressed without even noticing it. A lot of the time in life, we probably have an idea of what something should look like or how it should present itself. And if it doesn't show itself in that way, we can often miss it. And that was probably the situation with me with depression. So yeah, during this journey, not only have I learned a lot about myself, I've actually learned a lot about, the broader topic of mental health in general.
So I know that I wanted to spend more time on something that I didn't get too much time on last time. So I'm going to begin with that. OCD, obsessive compulsive disorder, is one of the things that you mentioned a little bit later in your book, but it was a revelation even for me that it comes under the purview of mental health disorder. And you've actually written in the book that it destroyed you. Do you want to tell us about how you've struggled with it over the years?
Yeah, I mean, OCD is one of those conditions that I think, like I mentioned, people have an idea of what it is without really knowing what it is and the distress it can cause. And what OCD really is that you have an obsession and you try and nullify that by doing a compulsion, and it becomes a disorder when it sort of takes over your life. And for me, growing up, OCD played havoc. As I said, like in school, like I would have all these fears, and I felt like I had to do, like a number of different behaviors in order to make myself feel better. And the thing is that even though you rationally know that it's unnecessary, right? The pain and that voice in your head just, the OCD wins every time. And it just takes over everything you do, and you just waste so much time living in constant fear that something could go wrong if you don't engage in this compulsive behavior, and the behavior, like I mentioned in the book, can be something as outlandish as opening and shutting your door 25 times. And it's things like that where on one level, that this is really wasting your time, but on another level, you just can't do anything to stop it.
Is it bothering you to speak about it right now?
Bothers me to think back of like how much distress it caused me, for sure. And it still does, right? It's not something that can be healed. It's what's known as a chronic condition, so it's always there. I'm just in a better place today to identify it and deal with it because of the work I've done. I'm also, and I'll tell your listeners, I got no shame in this, I'm also on medication for it at the moment, SSRI antidepressants, which I talk about in the book. But SSRIs, for a lot of people, they're given them for mood, they're given that they are an antidepressant. But what I didn't realize is that they're also prescribed as a cure, not a cure, but to help OCD. So writing this book over the last 6-7 months, you can imagine, triggered a lot of that OCD. So I went to my therapist, he sent me to a psychiatrist, and I said, right now I've done all my work. I don't drink. I've done all my work, but I need something to help me. And she said, no, you're a candidate for the moment. Take medication. And I am taking it, and it's helping. And the reason I mention this, Joe, is because I want to make it that point to people watching this, that there is no shame in taking medication if you need to. It's available. It's there. We shouldn't turn our back on it. And there's absolutely no shame in reaching out and asking for help and taking something if you need to.
So, and I say this again, I agree with it, absolutely everything you're saying. There's still that kind of stigma that exists around us that, we're not going to ask for help, that even if we can ask for help, we'd rather not. We think it's going to get sorted on its own, rather not get medicated for it. Is it something that you found different between the Indian setup and and UK or US where you're based now?
I think a lot of the time people think it's going to get sorted based on what others tell them. Ah, don't worry, what have you got to be? It's just a phase. Ah, don't worry, you know, you know what I mean? Like, you wrote about this in your book, like, you know, oh, it's just a phase, you'll get over it. Ah, you're just in a low mood. And I always say, and this goes for anything in life, bad advice is worse than giving no advice. So if you don't know what you're talking about, keep your mouth shut. Literally, because I think you can do more harm and damage to people by trying to give them advice that's not based on any truth, just for the sake, because you feel like you have to tell them, ah, it's okay, you'll get over it. Well, you might think you're doing that person a service by saying that, but actually you're not. You're belittling the problem that they have, and you can actually send them down a very dangerous route where they will either feel ashamed to get help or they won't receive the help, and it can spiral, as we know, into something much bigger. I think everywhere mental health, you know, is there's a stigma. I think it's getting a lot better. I think, you know, sadly, look what's happened in the last year, the pandemic, right? And I've been speaking to some experts in the field on this. And the real lasting effect of this pandemic, the real pandemic isn't coronavirus, it's mental health. You know, the coronavirus will eventually be put under control through vaccinations or whatever ever. We'll be able to control it. Eventually we'll get the thing sorted and it'll be under control. But there isn't any vaccinations for mental health. And the mental health issues that people have suffered because of the last year aren't going away anytime soon. And there is no magic cure, vaccination, or anything like that. So, you know, if you ever want to look at a silver lining at anything, one thing the coronavirus and the isolation and the quarantine did was force people to look at mental health in more detail and give it the importance it deserved. And because of that, I think there's definitely a brighter light shone on it. You know, you see a lot of public figures in the West, public figures in India as well, using their platforms nowadays to talk about mental health and to talk about their own experiences. So I think we're definitely getting there. We're getting to a place where it's becoming more acceptable. But I do think in India, it's still got a long way to go. We are still slightly backwards when it comes to talking about issues of mental health. And you know, it's like the elder generation. We talked about this the other day. The elder generation, this just didn't exist for them, right? These sorts of conversations around mental health and anxiety. Therefore, to them, it's not seen as that big a deal. So the only way we're going to help people is to get the younger generation to start looking at this and to embracing what they're feeling and to accept that it's okay to seek help. Like, I'll say this, I've said this so many times, I'll say it again, like India is the motherland of spirituality and well-being, right? You have people from the West flocking to India for all these spiritual awakenings and all of this stuff, right? And what is it? Well-being is mind, body, and soul. So you will go to a temple for your soul, for the soul connection, and everyone's fine with it. You go and do a yoga practice, or you go and do some Ayurvedic cleanse in Kerala for the body, everybody's happy with it. But God forbid you try and do anything to look after your mind, suddenly you're labeled a lunatic and you're crazy and this and that. And I think people need to remember that well-being also includes, I'm giving you a very long answer here because I'm very passionate about this, because I think it's important that we get this message out there, is that well-being includes not just the body, it includes the emotions and the mental side of things as well. And we have to remember that.
No, yes. All the experts have been, you know, in India warning Siddhartha that we have an epidemic after the epidemic. And it's very scary. To give you an example, a friend of mine was trying to get an appointment, you know, with a therapist. And this was about 3 months ago. And she couldn't get an appointment for the next 4 months. This is how busy therapists are at the moment. And the fact that things are so out of control, especially also with children. But children are not, we're not talking about children because that comes last for us as a priority, unfortunately. But anyway, that's a story for another day. Tell me, what was the reception from your family or your close ones? You know, when you opened up about your mental health issues?
I will say that I just want to pick up on one thing before this goes. Just one comment from someone called Jazz 507. It says the pandemic gave me suicidal thoughts, and
I understand.
I just want to say that, you know, I'm sorry to hear that that happened, but I think it's very important to acknowledge how much courage and bravery it takes to admit that. And to sit here and to type that it gave me suicidal thoughts. You see, just getting people to admit these things to themselves, that's really all it takes. Is that the first step to solving any sort of problem is to admit that there is one. So the fact that Jazz 507 has been able to admit openly that I had suicidal thoughts takes a tremendous amount of A, self-awareness, but B, bravery. So I just wanted to congratulate that person. And I think that it's as little as that. That's all we have to do, is just to be honest, to change the narrative around this. So yeah, I just wanted to say that point because I think it's important.
No, of course. And to Jazz, you know, there is always light at the end of the tunnel, no matter how bleak you think things are at the moment. And as Sid and I discussed this earlier, there's a tribe out there who's going through a lot of similar feelings and emotions that you think you may be alone, you know, in. So fight out and keep at it. Sid?
Yeah, I now this kind of ties into what I was saying, what you asked me about how did my family and friends react. You know, I think having a support system for anything in life is important, right? I think that you first of all have to be your own, you know, first and foremost, it has to come from within, right? You have to take that first step. And for me, my family, I didn't really discuss my issues with my family, like my dad or anyone like that. Like, you know, they know I've gone through stuff. They know I go through therapy. I explained to my mom, I told her, actually, my mum found out about all of this because on World Mental Health Day, I think about 2 or 3 years ago, I put up a post of the antidepressants I was taking, saying that I've been taking these, and I'd forgotten I didn't even tell her that I was on them. And then she asked me, and you know, she's been receptive. But I think what's important is that both my dad, my mum, are from a generation where this just wasn't talked about, right? So this is new territory for them. And but you know, my mum has always been very open with wanting to understand and learn more about it. And you know, I think my mum also knows how happy it makes me talking about this subject because I'm very passionate about it. And I remember she said it to me last year. She's like, I'm really happy that you found something that you're so passionate about. So I think she's happy that I'm happy being able to spread, you know, what I can around this. As for my friends, they were all great to me. Like no one has ever said anything in a negative way. Even when I stopped drinking, right? None of them were like, "Oh, you've become so boring," or "You should drink." So there's been nothing but support from them as well. And yeah, I guess I got very lucky with the people that I got.
You said you stopped drinking about 3 years ago. Is that correct?
3 years, just over 3 years.
You don't miss it?
No.
Is there no temptation at all?
No temptation. I've never been in a situation where I've been like, oh my God, I need a drink. Like I've had to hold myself back. It's never been like that.
So tell me, and this is the question I think I ran out of time on last time. How does your situation impact your relationships? Is there an impact, or you know, are you on the back foot? How does it work?
Relationships on the back foot is in what way?
You know, do you feel conscious about the fact that, you know, you may have OCD and you don't want to constantly be doing something when you're when you're out with somebody, or you know, some stuff like that?
No, I've got a lot better. I tell you, my OCD usually happens when I'm on my own. But the girls that I've dated and stuff like that, ironically, one of them just joined the live. I've been fortunate to have dated some very special girls who've all been very understanding, you know, people, and they've been very sort of understanding of me as well. But you know, I probably wasn't aware. I'd really only started doing my self work with after I'd started dating one of them, right? So the ones before that, I hadn't really done any of this work. So really, I didn't really know what I was going through, if you know what I mean. But it does waste time. Like it's just like, it can take you out of the present moment sometimes. I think that's what I found, is that you know, you want to be present with the person you're with. And then if you've got all these obsessive thoughts going on and then you're trying to fight them, it can take you out of enjoying the moment. And that's happened a fair few times.
So going back to, you know, where do you think a lot of this possibly stemmed from your parents' divorce? It goes all the way back then.
Does it stem back from there? Yeah, definitely. I think that was definitely, I mean, I think that, are you talking about OCD in general or just the mental health?
Just the mental health.
I think it definitely stems back from my parents' divorce, or at least when I was younger. You know, I think most people, what they're going through, it usually stems from something in your youth, right? And I think that the divorce, see, it wasn't just the divorce. Like if you remember what I write in the book, it's not just the divorce, it's everything that then happened in the aftermath of the divorce, and how my life changed, and how this new family came into play, and how I was splitting holidays, and how my mom had someone new in her life, and how my dad had this new family. I think all of that added up was having an effect on me, which, you know, as a child, you don't sort of acknowledge it, right? Or register what's going on.
And it's something, again, we talked about the fact that we don't give enough emphasis to divorced families or children of, you know, couples who've been divorced.
I don't think it's just the children, you know, Joe. I think it's the parents as well. I think the problem, what's happened is that divorce has sadly become such a common occurrence that people think that it's just a normal part of life. And what people forget is that no one gets married with the intention of getting divorced, right? You don't go into a marriage intending to get divorced. So when it happens, it's a traumatic event. Right? It's a traumatic, unnatural occurrence that shocks all parties involved. And of course, it's important, you know, I read something, or I spoke, a couple of things I'll say here is that I read something, well, no, I didn't read, I spoke to my therapist about this, and she said that if a child is, let's just say, abandoned as a general term by a parent, so, you know, a divorce happens and one parent leaves, or someone, whatever happens, a child's mind at that age only has the ability to process it in one way, which is, I must have done something wrong. And this is not me saying this, this is apparently a clinical thing, that a child's mind is only developed enough to, that's the only way they can make sense of the situation is, oh, I must have done something wrong. So that sticks with children, right? The other thing is that children from divorce can also suffer from PTSD, which is post-traumatic stress disorder. Now, when we talk about PTSD, or most of the people watching this will probably know that PTSD is usually spoken about in relation to soldiers coming back from war. You don't think that children from divorced families could suffer from PTSD, but they can. So yes, with that in mind, I think there needs to be a lot more care given to people from divorce. But then again, as you said, we give attention to children, right? And all good parents will give attention to their children and their children's well-being. But the parents should also remember to take care of themselves, because it's a trauma for them as well, right? Having your marriage fall apart is a trauma for you, not just for your child. So I think it's important that everyone is looked after.
And it was hard on your mom, which you figured out much later, right? I mean, you were a child. So I think it took you time to kind of figure out that your mom was struggling as well to keep going, I guess, in a sense.
Yeah, I think when you're young, right? I mean, like even today, I'm 34. My mom is 66. I still see her as an adult and I see myself as a child, right? And that'll probably continue for the rest of my life. I think when it comes to parents, we don't view them as human beings. We view them as these superhero-esque adults who don't have feelings of their own. And we can often miss what they're going through.
So, my sense of when you were a child and this whole divorce took place, your father remarried, his other family, was that, you were always on the outside looking in. Did you think that for a large part of your growing up time as well, you were also on the outside, just taking refuge, as they say, in the IPL parties or, hanging out with people, but you were actually still on the outside trying to find your place?
Yeah, I think I was trying to find my place, but I think I was, I mean, let's talk about the time during the IPL. I was 22 years old. I think most 22-year-olds don't know their place yet. So I don't think I was
No.
doing anything abnormal. And you all look at the IPL and the parties and everything, but I think people forget that I was actually running that team as well at 22 years old. And it was a lot of work that went in behind the scenes of, running a professional sports team. And the IPL, what that gave me was living with the team and traveling with the team is, as I say in the book, it gave me that opportunity to feel like I was a part of a family. And that's what I've always looked for in life, is that sense of belonging and that sense of connection, which the IPL gave me.
And you're continuing to look for that, isn't it? Like I said as well, I find that you're looking at it in whether you've gone for your training, for your acting classes, or wherever you're going, you're looking for that sense of family still.
Correct. And I'm looking for that sense of connection. Got a lot better at it. Like I'm okay on my own, but I'm better at being on my own. But I mean, that's just me, my personality. Like my personality is connection. I want to connect to human beings. Like I love doing sessions like this with you, and being able to connect with one another.
So there's one question I will take that. What's physical health and training got to contribute towards one mental health?
I think it's all
And well-being.
mixed, right? I think physical health, mental health, everything is intertwined. Training, like going to the gym, it releases natural endorphins in the body, which make you feel good, right? And for me, running is something that I do a lot of because it's a meditation for me. Just being able to put my
Wow.
music in and go running, it's a very meditative experience. So I love it. One thing I will share with everyone that I've found is if I don't drink enough water, if I am dehydrated, my anxiety levels and the OCD get triggered.
Oh, really?
So
I have
I think
Kavita Devgan, a nutritionist here, who's been going on and on about how water is important for all of us.
water
I
is
think she's
everything. So I'd say that to everyone out there is just drink enough fluids, please.
yes. So I was talking about before you went off about the guilt factor of having grown up in,
Yeah,
born into a privileged family, and then trying to get acceptance into the fact that mental health actually spares nobody. There are no boundaries, there are no caste, no creed, no, everybody's the same before it.
yeah, it's everyone. That's the thing that everyone needs to remember is that mental health doesn't discriminate. And we do, this is the narrative we need to change, is that only certain people can suffer from it. That's a very dangerous narrative that I think that we should all strive towards changing, because it's just simply not true. And I definitely probably didn't initially accept what I was going through, because I had this idea in my head of what I thought mental health was and who I thought could suffer from it, and I didn't fit the image of what I had of it, so I let it go. And I think that's another very important point I want to say on this, is that we shouldn't have preconceived notions or judgments about how something should look, because if you do and it doesn't present itself in that way, you can easily miss it. Like if you think that depression is just when you get to a point where you feel suicidal, well, then you're going to miss everything up until that point, right? So I think it's important to notice that things can manifest in different ways for different people at different levels.
Do you want to say anything about what to look out for? Any?
Well, I think what my therapist told me is that if you have symptoms, you know, there's a number, and I'm not going to get into anything clinical now because I think
Yeah,
that
of
everyone,
course.
I'd also encourage people to do their own research because it's different for everyone. But you know, there are a few kind of telltale signs. But I think that the general consensus is that if you, whatever you're feeling, if it lasts for more than 2 weeks, then perhaps it's time to go and, you know, try and get professional help. Um, the, just monitor it, I'd say.
So
I just want to say
sitting,
one thing on this. Just someone has said, does lack of sleep affect mental health? 100%. I think sleep is another thing that is massively underrated. And I think that sleep doesn't just affect mental health. I think sleep is one of the biggest causes of physical ill health as well, a lack of sleep. I think sleep and nutrition are two things that can contribute to well-being without a doubt.
but isn't it like a cycle? Mental health doesn't quite let you get a good night's sleep.
Yes, that is true. Like anxiety is there, right? You know, but then there are things you can do to help you calm down before you sleep. Like, you know, you probably don't want to be looking at Instagram while you're on your pillow 5 minutes before you're going to try and sleep, right? If Instagram gives you anxiety, find things that work for you. For some people, drinking a tea, like a magnesium tea or a hot tea or something hot, helps them calm down. Other people like to read. Other people meditate. You write in a journal, whatever it is that calms you down before the end of the night. You got to just find that for yourself. But there are ways.
So what is your ritual?
I get into bed. I do sort of watch something. I mean, it depends actually. I usually get into bed and I just usually lie there and I'll say like a quick inventory of the day, like what I was thankful for, and then I'll kind of like just try and float off.
Or it's time for us to almost float off, but with the time. But Sid, a couple of last questions. One is you mentioned about your father in the book and your relationship. Do you want to share a little bit light on that? The fact that, you know, having always been referred to as your father's son was not something that, you know, contrary to all these people out there, was not something that made you really smile at all times.
No, it didn't. It didn't. It didn't. Wasn't always the nicest thing, but I can understand why. I guess people would refer to me as that. I just hope though now people see me and the book for what it is, as its own thing, and yeah, that's really it.
But
It's
does it bother you that, you know, people will question your book, question your motives behind writing a book, or, you know, just wonder why you've come out with a book now?
yeah, but then I tell people to read it and then ask, you know, after you see the depth I go into in that book, what motive do I have apart from helping people? Right? If I, you know, I don't have anything to gain from this book from apart from helping people. Like I am not going to make money from this book. Like we all know how you know it, I know it, the publishing industry is not something that you get into if you want to go into an early retirement. Like I was joking with my mum, like, you know, you can get
Yeah.
my book is cheaper than a McDonald's Happy Meal. So no one is making money to go into a retirement off this book. So money is certainly not the motive behind writing this book. And if I wanted to kind of give an image of myself, I could have written about so many more things that I've experienced in my life. But I wrote this book with the intention of helping people. And that's it. It's an honest reflection of that. And I'd say to people, you know what? I've had people reply to me saying, oh my God, Sid, I love your book. I think it's the greatest thing in the world. Like, you've helped me so much. Thank you. And I've had one person message me saying, hated it. Rich boy problems, didn't like it, didn't resonate with it. Guess what? Both those people are correct. Why are they correct? Because it's a book, it's a piece of art, it's subjective. Therefore, if you don't like it, you don't like it. And that's fine. Like, you're correct if you don't like it. But don't like it because you actually don't like it. Don't not like it because you don't like me because I happen to be related to someone that you don't like.
Right. So my final uh, A final word from you, Sid. What are you going to tell people in general? The way we judge anybody, I mean, I don't know how much you read about the Sushant Singh Rajput case about the actor, and all kinds of news came. Oh, he was smiling. How could he have committed suicide? How come that there's so many pictures of him smiling, laughing, and how could he have any mental health issues? How do we tell people this is the one basic rule we get wrong from the beginning?
Well, first of all, what you see on the outside doesn't tell. Again, let's use the perfect cliche right now is don't judge a book by its cover, right? Just because what you see on the outside is not a reflection of what's going on within. Like, you see all this, what they now known as toxic positivity on Instagram, right? Where you see all of these people happy and smiling and like, oh my God, my life's so great. And then it can make people feel like, oh my God, my life isn't great. But you don't know what those people are going through inside. So what you see on the outside isn't always a fair reflection of what's happening to someone on the inside. And we shouldn't take things at literal face value. The other thing to remember with like the Sushant thing is that it was a tragedy. It was sad. But what will be even more of a tragedy is that if we don't learn from this to ensure that there is not another situation like this, we have to all learn from what happened to Sushant. We have to all see where we can all do better as a society to stop things like this happening again, not just in Bollywood, but in life. We should all work towards ensuring that things like this, people don't feel the need that they get to a place where suicide is the only option. And we all have a duty to do that.
All right, Sidhartha Mallya, I'm going to end it at this. We could continue once again, but we're short of time yet again. And it was lovely speaking with you once again. I think a lot of people have said they're going to be buying your book. And I hope people get inspired to talk about their problems more openly, to reach out to people, to ask for support, to just speak as much as they could, because as Sid says, and I believe, mental health is the big epidemic we are now staring at. So people stay safe, open up, and wishing you all the best, Sid. Thanks for joining me.
No, and thank you for giving me the time to talk about such an important subject.
We will chat again. Thank you.
Bye, Jo. Thank you.